Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged.
Guilty as charged. That's my guy.
Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Saturday. I haven't done a Saturday show in a while. We were not planning on doing it, but in typical me fashion, I managed to get sick on the last week of my school break. So I had a 101-degree fever on Thursday, which is why we did not have a show on Thursday. So we appreciate the flexibility and the kindness for you guys being here on Saturday instead of a Thursday. And obviously, Tyler, I know you're very flexible right now with summer and stuff like that. But yeah, that's why we didn't have a show on Thursday. I was low-key like feeling like I was gonna die, but you know, it is what it is.
Steven, you didn't die. Congratulations.
I didn't
die. Congratulations to you. You know, I think it's been so cold for you guys over there in Fresno. Like it's been a little like colder than usual. I think your body was just like, what is this? Time to crank up a fever. But I'm glad you are feeling better. Glad we could do this on a Saturday.
Yeah, last weekend we were under 90 degrees all weekend long, and I think my body was just like, yeah, it's too nice for you, sick. And no, not in all seriousness, it's all good. I'm feeling okay. If I cough a little bit during the show, or if I sound a little bit nasally, I apologize, but that's why I'll do my best to mute my mic if I cough and all that good stuff. But we wanted to make sure we got our tiers of the Chargers defense out this week. We're actually only like a couple of weeks away from training camp. The new uniform are releasing out. So we want to make sure we can get all of these other shows out of the way. So we're here this morning to do our Chargers defense tiers. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the offense episode. I think there's some more interesting stuff here on defense, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I did a mock through of this the other day, and it's tough. And I've seen a couple of people already post theirs, and I am realizing that once again, I am lower on the players overall than I think the consensus fans are compared to last year.
Yeah, I think that's probably how we'll end up as well. As always, have to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. This is, to me, it is the most flexible way to make sure that you are having a lot of fun doing daily fantasy sports while also kind of protecting your wallet. They obviously do Flex Fridays where you guys can make sure and opt in to be eligible for a protected play, which means you are not in danger of losing money that particular day. Obviously, the NFL season is not in full swing. NBA is officially over. But I know there are lots of baseball fans out there. I know there's some women's basketball fans out there. You guys can still get in on Prize Picks, get in on the action in those particular sports. And we are only a few short weeks away from being able to partake in preseason football Prize Picks. So best way to do that is download the Prize Picks app in whatever app store you use. Use the code GUILTY to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that is code GUILTY to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Doing so does actually support our show as well as yourself. So we definitely encourage you to partake. All right. Let's get started with our defense tiers here. Tyler did include Jesse Minter in the defense overall as well. So I think people will know where we put Jesse Minter is going to be very high. But Tyler, where do you want to start with the defense?
Let's start with interior defensive line. I think that is by far the most challenging group, or it's potentially the easiest group, depending on how you want to work through these guys. But
sure,
no one in this group is a sure thing. Now I can point to the most sure thing, which is clearly Tart. The per play stat suggests that. You saw him in the playoff game. He was outstanding. They brought him back. You know, he's the only guy returning and playing a ton of snaps and was good last year. So I feel like of those guys, it's Tart. But even then, it's not like he was starting the beginning of the year and he played a ton of snaps the whole year. And he was like the third or fourth most snaps last year. And as we've mentioned several times, the guy with the most pressures, the guy with the second most pressures, they're gone. So it's a tricky group I think it's maybe easier to sort. It's tricky to separate, I think, maybe between these guys.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious where we end up. And this is this is a group I noticed with the people that posted their tiers online or discussed them that I think I'm just naturally lower on than they are. But I almost want to, with this group, like tier them first, and then maybe have a more of a discussion of like, okay, now knowing what we know about Elston and Minter, who of this group that's kind of maybe jam-packed in the middle somewhere is going to take that step forward. So maybe we can like sort them first or have that discussion as we go. But then I'm very curious, like who's Tart this year, basically.
Yeah, I think that's the right place to start. I will say that, you know, during minicamp and OTAs, there's not a ton you can take away from the interior defensive line, like until they get pads on. But it is also important to note that Daniel Popper stated in his most recent article that Deshaun Hand has actually been the one who's kind of taking the Morgan Fox snaps, if you will. He's the one that when they go to their 3 edge rusher looks with Khalil, Thule, and Bud, Deshaun Hand is the one that's out there. And Tier Tart is going to play a lot. So it seems like those two are like your quote unquote starters, that those are the main 2 guys that are going to play the most snaps, which I think makes sense. Like they're the 2 most veteran players in the unit. They probably have the highest ceiling in the unit. So I think we can start with those 2, or maybe we can kind of start with the guys who we know are more backups. But I did want to discuss that it seems like those 2 have the early lead in terms of being the starters, which again, to me makes sense.
Sure. I think we should start with Tart because I think you might feel the same way. Everyone else is at least at his level or below him. There's no one above him. So I think if we set where Tart is, we know where everybody else would be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think obviously he's not an all-pro player. He's not a Pro Bowl player. Solid starter. Like if you're just telling me that as opposed to like ranking him in terms of like the overall defensive tackle in the league, you know, I think I feel like that's probably his ceiling. But we've never really seen him be a full-time starter in any of his stops. Obviously, the previous stops before the Chargers were not that great, but I feel like he was an average starter caliber player to end the season last year. And this year he's had a full offseason to work with Mike Elston, Jesse Minter. The Chargers have had a chance to, you know, get Ben Herbert with him the entire offseason. He's talked about how this is the first place he feels like he's actually valued. I feel like it's reasonable to expect him to jump up into the solid starter category. But I do also see like a very real likelihood that over the course of the entire season, he's more of an average starter just because we've never really seen him play that many snaps.
I completely agree. So last year, I think you and I would agree, even if Poona Ford wasn't a top 8 player, we have numbers on here because it's a bit of a guideline, but it's by no means a rule. Poona Ford would have been like someone we would have pushed for the Pro Bowl. Kind of would have put them as he finished the season in that tier.
Yeah,
so
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So to me, I think right now, with a little bit of projection and hoping that Tart being the more sure thing takes a step forward, I don't mind solid starter. Do I think he's a top 10 defensive tackle? No. But I think that's kind of where I'd appropriately put him. Again, the numbers just being a bit of a guideline for us. Defensive tackle, like receiver, there's just so many. So he's probably, 28th maybe, but that's behind 27 great D tackles. So I think solid starter is a completely fine spot for him. I think Pro Bowl is very rich. Solid starter is some optimism. So I think that's a good one.
Yeah. And defensive tackle, like receiver, it really needs to be like separated out when it comes to like rankings, right? Because Poona Ford, when you're including guys like Chris Jones and obviously Nnamdi Madubuike and like that whole crowd, like Poona Ford is not better than those guys, but for his role as a nose tackle, I think he was a Pro Bowl caliber player. Yeah. And I think Tart in his role will be classified as a solid starter. So I feel okay about this. Is he going to light the world on fire in terms of pressures and tackles for loss? No, but I do think like the splash plays overall will lead to a very solid season this year in 2025 for Tier Tart, assuming he stays, locked in and he stays, committed to this team as he said he is right now.
Yeah, I agree there. So again, the trick part now comes with the rest of them, because to be completely honest, based on their previous stints and based on the numbers, all these guys are rotation players or below average starters. We don't really know a ton about them. So in terms of like, I don't know who my coordinator is, I'm putting them on any team. These are below average starters or pure rotation players. Does anybody jump into average starter in your opinion? Or does anybody kind of feel like that step forward this year? Because I could be convinced of any of them being an average starter. Obviously, they took Jamari Caldwell in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
But there's just so much projection with all these guys. We're just hoping. I don't know if I can put any of them in average starter, but I feel like someone is going to be an average starter.
Yeah, I feel like the most likely candidate there is probably Deshaun Hand. Just because I think he fits stylistically a little bit more of like that 3-tech 4-eye kind of role that they want in terms of the size and the ability to use his hands, no pun intended. If it's anybody, it's him. I don't feel comfortable enough with like Naquan Jones or Otito Ogbonia. We've seen for several years now at this point, and Otito actually like played very well in the first few games last year, but then it became very much a problem position, and that's why Tart ended up taking over for him. Jamari could certainly hit the ground running, but we know that rookie defensive tackles do tend to take a little bit of a longer time to kind of find their ground and be able to hit the ground running. And Justin Eboigbe barely played last year, and I had about the similar grade on the two, coming out of their college respective seasons. So I think if anybody's an average starter at the end of the season, it is probably Deshaun Hand. The other guys, I think we can have it where they're at right now or pure backup after that.
Okay, that works for me. Anybody lower than below average starter? I think everybody on here is. I didn't include
who's to the left of Naquan Jones? Is that Eboigbe?
Guy?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong person. This is Eboigbe.
That's
Eboigbe. Otito is here.
Okay,
that's Eboigbe.
Okay.
Yeah. These are very tiny on our screens as of hanging there.
So backups, I think we can. Yeah, I think if you want to put a hand there, that's fine.
Yeah.
Backups, I think we can pencil in Matlock there as a pure backup because he's going to be on the roster. It just kind of depends where he's playing.
Where is he?
Matlock's next to Benjamin St. Juste.
There we go. Thank you.
Caldwell, I think for now probably is in the pure backup role, just because I think they'll probably lean more towards the veteran players.
Okay, so they're four, their main four, which is kind of what they did last year. So Tart, Hand, Jones, Eboigbe, and Caldwell's more of a.
Yeah, that's probably it. And I think there's a really good chance that Otito is either practice squad or off the team. They're not going to keep 7 defensive tackles.
I doubt it. How many snaps did Otito play last year? Towards the end, because they didn't really have an injury that forced.
No, I think it was literally just like he started not playing super well.
Yeah, so sorry, I wish I had this ready. I mean, he was playing 40 snaps in week 15, and he played 32 in the wild card game. Well, I think everybody played a ton of snaps that game.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I guess him and Naquan Jones are probably on like the same footing. Because I think Eboigbe and Hand are your 2 pass rushers.
Yeah.
I think obviously Jamari is going to make it. I think him and Tart are very similar stylistically, kind of players. So that's 4. Matlock makes 5. So you're really trying to parse
do you
through.
Count Matlock as a D tackle is the other part of that.
Right. I don't think they should. I think he should play offense, but it sounds like they're going to continue to let him play defense.
Right.
But is that 10 snaps a game? Is that 5 snaps a game? is that only when injury strikes. Like, I don't think he's actually going to play a ton of defense.
Yeah. I just don't think Caldwell's going to be inactive. So I just have a hard time seeing him being inactive. I could put Otito there, but again, like the veteran leaning, that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't see I don't have Caldwell being inactive or roster bubble. Not obviously not roster bubble, but in the pure backup spot. I would rather put Otito there, even though he played more last year.
No, I agree. I think Otito is behind Caldwell.
Okay.
I guess the question is more because Naquan Jones is on a minimum contract, and this regime didn't draft Otito, but they essentially handed him a starting spot like right away. So
yeah,
is Naquan Jones more of a practice squad player, or because him and Otito are very similar players? One of those two is probably not making the roster, is basically what I'm saying.
Okay, so not making the roster if we're technically counting, I mean, maybe even with or without, but if we count Matlock as a D tackle, they're not keeping 7. So if they keep 6, one of them is not making it.
Yeah. One of them's not making it, and one of them is like the backup nose, essentially, is how I'm looking at that.
Right. I still think Otito's a better shot than Jones. If I had to pick, like to me, going into this, I didn't really have any consideration that Otito was even on the roster bubble. I think he doesn't play it as much this year for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's like, if I had to put money on it, even though I don't like either option as an option, I think Jones is less likely just because.
Yeah.
I mean, Otito played 538 snaps last year. So I just don't see like, not that Jones didn't play snaps, but going from that to off roster and cut, I don't know.
So do you want to leave Otito in the rotation player and put Naquan Jones in the?
That's I think what I would do.
Yeah, that's fine with me. So then when we would have the main 4 essentially being Tart, Hand, Eboigbe, Otito, and then Jamari is your rotational player.
Yeah.
And then TBD on Matlock and Naquan Jones.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think you go with your 6 and Matlock's a fullback, and you just pretend you're not keeping 7. I think that's kind of what they end up doing.
And I think that's what they should do. I think Naquan Jones is a better defensive tackle kind of player than Matlock is, but
yes,
he wants to be a Pro Bowl defensive tackle. So
I'd be stoked. That'd be awesome.
Amazing.
But no, that is very unlikely. Okay,
yeah.
I feel
Charcilio says this is really making me miss Puna. Yeah, we miss Puna Ford as well.
Yes.
If they had Puna Ford instead of Naquan Jones, for example, like this defensive tackle room, you'd feel really good about it. But
yeah, at minimum 2 guys in the B tier. Then I'd feel so good about that one too. But they couldn't get it done, and they said they got more guys. Well, that's the thing. Like Jesse Minder said, okay, we went and we got more guys, and they took a more guys approach. But it's like, okay, we're trying to figure out if Jones is even making the roster for sure.
Yeah.
We're projecting that Hand's going to be an average starter, which technically he has never been, but we're hoping he is because of Elston.
Yeah.
I really do wish they had stuck with Puna Ford.
Yeah, Steven pointed out this is why he wanted an interior defensive lineman in the first 2 rounds. They took one in the 3rd, but if Jamari hits, then if Jamari can hit right away, then I think we obviously would alleviate this some. And we're still, there's a lot of projection with Justin Eboigbe as well in here. And if he is really having the offseason that the Chargers say he is, and he can jump up to an average starter, then that would obviously help things a lot. But I will say, I think this is probably the position room to keep an eye on, like mid-season, for a potential trade or something like that, to try and maybe make a big playoff push. As that is, I think we can agree this is probably the weakest position group on the team, on the defense at least. And maybe that might be something they look to address at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I hope they do. Much like interior, but interior offensive line, like it's set, guys. But interior defensive line, at some point, if they win a ton of games, let's say they open the year, they go 3-0 in the division, you can't go into the playoffs with your best pass rusher is Tart, respectfully.
Yeah. So they need a big leap from Eboigbe, I think, in order to not be a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more aggressive at defensive tackle, just because like they need more pass rush, like you said.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the edge rushers. I think we can safely leave Kyle Kennard and Bud Dupree where they are at by default.
Yes. Yeah. Despite the sort of extension. Yeah. Kennard, I like him quite a bit. Even if he were drafted in the 3rd round, I'd say rotation player.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Yeah. Just by his role, like he's their 4th edge rusher. He's going to play special teams. He's probably going to play like 15 snaps a game. So, unless somebody gets hurt, obviously.
Yeah.
Where I think you're like maybe slightly lower on Thule than I am. So where do you want to put him heading into 2025?
No, I believe he'll be a solid starter. And again, the numbers assigned to it, maybe we can just throw it out the window entirely. But
I think it definitely makes sense for all pro and Pro Bowl. But
yes, definitely. I guess I'll start with I think because I also feel like I'm higher on Mac than you are, which means I don't know where you are placing these two guys in their tiers, because like I still believe in Khalil Mack as a Pro Bowl conversation guy.
I mean, he was a Pro Bowler last year.
Yeah, so I don't really see any reason he's falling off. He doesn't exactly have Joey Bosa opposite him. Granted, that has not really stopped him either. And in theory, Thule should be a better overall player, not playing almost 400 special team snaps. So I'm thinking Mac is your Pro Bowl, not all pro. That's kind of locked into, I feel like, these days with the same kind of 3-4 names. I do not have Thule on that level. So like to me, if I'm doing this, I would go more Mac here and Thule here. Again, like last year we did this, like, yeah, here goes Thule in that big leap. Didn't happen. But overall, I think he's a very good player who's now going to get more snaps to show what he can do. So that's kind of how I'd have these two, is Pro Bowl and solid starter. But I'd also understand why Thule would be average starter as well, and why Mac would be solid starter here. So I'm game for either, but I don't have them on the same tier, that's for sure.
I think there's a chance that Khalil, just given his age, ends the season more of a solid starter.
Yeah.
I'm not going to expect that. Like, I think he was still PFF's 2nd highest graded run defending edge rusher in the league. And like, he's still like, that to me is the key thing to watch when it comes to aging players, is like, can they still do the more difficult thing at a high level? Like even somebody like Von Miller, who's like a designated pass rusher, he can still do that. That's the easier part. Can he play run defense? Can he set an edge? That's the more difficult part. And Khalil Mack still is one of the 2 or 3 best edge rushers in the league at that. I think the injuries, playing through 2 groin injuries, definitely impacted his pass rush productivity last year. So I think the run defense is at such a high level, and I think the pass rush he's not going to get 17 sacks again. But maybe that becomes, maybe that bumps back up to like 10 or 11. And to me, that's a Pro Bowl edge. If you're a top 5 run defending edge rusher, and you can give me 9 to 11 sacks, that's a Pro Bowl edge rusher all day. And so I think I still feel really good about Khalil being in that regard. Do I think he can play 5 more years like Derwin James does at that level? Probably not. But he's also training MMA with Derwin James this season. So I still think Khalil has this year and probably next year just to play at like a Pro Bowl level. And then we can maybe start discussing when he kind of needs to maybe shift into a more of a mercenary type of role. But for now, I'm very comfortable putting him as a Pro Bowl level player.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. So we're generally on the same page there. Where do you have Thule then?
Thule, I think, is also a solid starter. Again, I think Khalil is more consistently disruptive, but Thule, his run defense flashes are so high end, and he hates being blocked by tight ends. I love it about him. He still is very, very good in the run defense category. So again, if you can give me elite run defense, 40 pressures, 8 sacks, I think that's a solid starting edge rusher. And that's basically been what he has produced so far in his career. So if he can take a step, what does that look like? Can he really become a Pro Bowl edge rusher? I don't know if he has that kind of ceiling, just because of his, lack of athletic traits and his lack of elite length. But the motor is ridiculous. The run defense is elite. So I think he's very comfortably a solid starter. The question, I guess, more important for him is, can he elevate higher than this? And I think that's to be determined. But for me, he's comfortably a solid starter.
Yeah, I think there's a conversation at the end of the year where you say, hey, Thule's playing as well as Khalil Mack. Does that mean they're both playing at a Pro Bowl level? I don't know, but I think they can both like play very good defense. So I'm fine with solid starter here as well. That feels a good spot for him. It feels a bit optimistic as well, but also realistic. So I like this spot for him.
Cool. Sounds good to me. Trayvon Morris-Brash is on here.
He is. He is.
He's next to
47.
I always forget the Texans linebacker name that they signed.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's a decent chance he makes the roster.
Yeah. Just
because I don't know how much they're actually going to trust Kyle Kennard right away from a special team standpoint. But he was so good the first couple of weeks of training camp. He had a great first preseason game, and then he really tailed off a little bit. So I definitely need to see more from him in order for me to feel like comfortable about him making the roster.
Mm-hmm.
But I would definitely want to keep him around on the practice squad again.
Okay. So especially if we're keeping 6.5 D tackles, I do feel like granted, the Boygby thing didn't work out for them. Like, oh, let's try him at edge rusher or defensive end. Like, didn't work. There's kind of like he should just make the roster because they need bodies, but they didn't last year.
Yeah.
So I think that's fine for him. Practice squad could work for him, and we'll see. Maybe he has a good preseason.
Yeah, there's not that many spots available on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
So he would have to have an awesome preseason. And I think that's in the cards for him. And him and Kyle Kennard are going to play a ton because I don't think Khalil and Thule and Bud Dupree are going to play a ton of preseason snaps. So Thule probably will play a little bit, but I think Bud Dupree barely played in the preseason. Khalil's not playing at all. So Kyle Kennard and Trayvon Morris-Brash are going to play a ton in the preseason.
Yeah. Okay. That's edge rusher. We are everyone sorted? Yeah.
Yes. Let's do linebacker next then. We're just kind of going in order, I think.
Sure.
Do you want to do Dayon first, or do you want to start at the lower end?
Let's start at the lower end and work our way up there. So we can start with special teamers.
So what's his name? The one they signed from Houston? I forget.
Delshon Phillips.
Thank you. I think we can leave him as... So he's pure backup.
He'll be active for sure.
But he's a special teams player, but I don't think they signed him with the intent to play him.
No.
I have a take about Troy Dye that I think he could be an average starter if he were actually given the snaps.
Technically, is their second best linebacker.
Right now, I would say yes, he is their second best linebacker until we see Junior Colson playing. Like I went back and watched some of the games at the end of the season, and he was just like always in the right position. And there are definitely some athletic limitations, but with Denzel Perryman's injury history, and like he's a run defense only guy, blitz occasionally. Like he's a rotation player. I think Troy Dye is, or at least was, their second best linebacker last season. And I feel okay putting him as an average starter, honestly.
Okay. I agree with you. Who is the starting duo week 1 is my question there. Then
I think it's going to be Dayon and Junior. Like I still believe that Junior takes that leap. And I still think that he is going to, ascend, and he's, lost some weight. He looks great. They're obviously invested in him, so I think it is going to be Junior. But I just wanted to talk about Troy Dye because I loved watching his tape. Like I wasn't intently watching him, but the games that I was watching, he was just always in the right positions and filling the right roles. And so I think Troy Dye was probably the most pleasant surprise of last season. And I think if he were the starter, and he still could be, I think he could be an average starting linebacker in this league.
I think in the 5 years that we've actually watched football of the Chargers, Troy Dye had one of the 3 best backup seasons I've seen a backup Chargers player have. Technically, you could say Herbert's in there from year 1, but that's a technically different conversation.
Right.
I thought he was awesome and and the play when he started and when he played was very much so a very good, like very at minimum, I think average starter. I think sometimes he was a solid starter. His role this year, TBD. Maybe they go back to what they kind of were thinking last year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't mind putting him here based on play alone. I mean, we have Hand here. I guess he'll play more than Die, but yeah, I think Troy Dye played awesome last year. They clearly liked him enough to bring him back. I don't know who's making more between him and Perryman.
Ooh, good question.
I don't know if I'm sure it's pretty similar. And I don't know.
Okay, so Denzel Perryman is at 1.25 and Troy Dye is at 1.5.
Oh, interesting.
But Perryman has a higher guaranteed salary.
Yeah. Wait, I have him as 0 guarantees this year.
Did I read that wrong? Oh, I read that wrong. I'm sorry. Wow, so Troy Dye got a fully guaranteed contract. Okay.
Huh.
Good for him.
Interesting.
I think Dye and Perryman will still play, but I think Junior Colson will be like their starter. I think the four of them will all play with Dayon being like the unquestioned starter.
Okay, so we're placing Dye based on performance here, not necessarily
projection
role. So Perryman is a rotation player. I agree, because he is primarily run defense. So then Junior Colson is a what?
Yeah, it's tougher for me because I want to project him to taking that leap, and I believe he will. But his play last year was not very good. Like it was pretty below average last year. Again, there are reasons to justify that play. Like he didn't really have a training camp. He got injured twice. Definitely had a slow start. You know, Ben Herbert has said he wasn't like up to par physically. So I want to project him higher just because I do think he has that kind of ceiling. But I think until we see it, I probably would put him as an average starter, just like bumping up a little bit from last season. I think that's fair.
I think so. I think if he hits the ground running and there's no setbacks, that's my expectation for him this year, as long as everything works out okay. So by role, he's an average starter. By play, Troy Dye is an average starter. Hopefully Colson's play can elevate him to that without us putting an asterisk there.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
Okay.
How high do you think Dayon can get in 2025?
So the start of, and it was a real interesting switch. The start of the year, Dayon Henley, I think, was basically playing like an all-pro level. I think post whenever the injury was and things kind of slowed down for him, it wasn't as strong as the start to the year where I thought he could do nothing wrong. Maybe post like Browns game, I started to see like less and less of those Dayon Henley plays that he was making early. So if he's more like that, I think he pushes for all-pro conversation. But that's, again, we're talking about the 3 players and how often he's, all-pro is not just this year, but it's how often they've been discussed in that, how consistent are they there. Now, I don't believe he's PFF's 33rd linebacker or whatever stupid thing that they decided
That's
to post.
Crazy. Because he grades out very well on their numbers and on their grades. Like that's crazy to me.
Right. So fine. We've all, actually watched the games, I suppose. So where is he on my list here? Where are you, Henley? I think he's comfortably in a Pro Bowl discussion kind of. To me, like Derwin James is going to be spoiler. Derwin James is going to be in the All-Pro conversation, and that is someone who basically since he was drafted, we discuss. I mean, he got second team All-Pro his rookie season, so every year we're discussing him like that. I think Henley is going to touch that conversation this year, but I don't think get it just yet. And then I think moving forward through his hopeful contract extension, that's when it's just a constant all-pro conversation. So I think he's comfortably in Pro Bowl though, despite PFF's efforts.
Yeah, I think that's the bare minimum for me. So the Pro Bowl, the All-Pro and the Pro Bowl linebacker discussion is really frustrating because the Pro Bowl doesn't like they don't add more linebackers. Like they
Right.
still do like the whole 3-4 thing. So there's 6 All-Pro linebackers and then there's 8 Pro Bowl linebackers. So they only add the 2 extras, which I think is kind of silly, but because you have to play like a whole game theoretically. But anyways, so I think Pro Bowl is minimum like expectation for Deion is that he makes that kind of leap. I think he should have been a Pro Bowler last year. He was in that kind of conversation, but I think with Deion, there are definitely some things in order to make All Pro, as we've discussed, like he's gonna have to. There were 2 or 3 interceptions that he dropped last year. Those have to be caught. There were 3 or 4 times where he had the chance to get a sack or half sack, and he was not able to get the job done for whatever reason. Those have to be plays that he makes. Because if you look at the way that some of these players make those leaps, like Frankie Louvu, for example, for the Commanders, like he had like 9 sacks last year. So it was like he made the Pro Bowl because of that. So you have to get statistically in that kind of regard, and I think he can. But I think Pro Bowl is still very much in play for him.
Yeah, I agree there. So Pro Bowl feels good. Yeah, let's see. So 6 passes broken up last year. I can't find dropped interceptions because PFF does chart that, but 6 breakups last year. I can find run blocking for Dan Henley, but I can't find cover. Whatever.
I think you'd have to go to like the general by position coverage grade, and that's where I think the DRI is.
All right, folks, we're gonna do it.
If I'm not mistaken.
You're good. Dropped interceptions. Okay, 1.
Okay. I feel like that should be more. But
yeah, it could be a PBU characterized as a
True.
That's fine.
True. Yeah.
Okay. So Henley as a Pro Bowl, fine by me. I think we have all our linebackers. Okay.
Okay. So our audio audience is going to take a quick break, and then our YouTube audience is going to continue right along. All right, Tyler, do you want to do corners or safeties next?
Let's do safeties because we already mentioned Derwin James. I don't think anyone's was in like suspense of where we were going to put Derwin James, but I suppose I can start with that. You feel strongly All Pro there?
Yeah. 100%.
Great, easy. This is a very fun one though. The safeties at this point, Elijah Molden is kind of the okay. So Stephen or Stefan, I don't know the individuals how you pronounce his name. Put him in like the Elijah Molden like the Pro Bowl category, I believe. He kind of plays like it.
Yeah.
But where okay, let me start with this.
I mean, if he had not gotten hurt,
and
like if we knew from the jump that he was a starter for them, because obviously a lot of Pro Bowl votes is driven by fans, right?
Sure.
And so I don't even think he was eligible for the Pro Bowl. Like he was still technically like a backup for them. And then Alohi got hurt, and then that's kind of where we obviously saw him take a step forward. But again, highlighting potential interceptions, like there was a pretty reasonable chance that he could have gotten 5-6 interceptions for them. His run defense is fantastic. His man coverage is fantastic. So I think he can definitely take a Pro Bowl caliber leap. The question for me really is like, would he get that kind of notoriety after the way that this, just like his general portfolio is? But I mean, he played at a Pro Bowl caliber level last year, and he didn't have an offseason. Like he just kind of was thrown into the fire, and they were like, okay, 3 weeks later, you're a starter safety for us. Never playing safety before, new defense, new team. So I think there's a real chance that he becomes that. But I also know that like interceptions for safeties can be really fluky. Maybe this year he gets 1 instead of 3 or 4 or whatever it was. But at minimum, to me, he's a solid starter.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I'll definitely at least put him in solid starter. Could have Pro Bowl level play. I guess we're assuming that he's also this. So we're assuming that if you have 2 safeties and Derwin's one of them, that Molden is the second guy on the field.
Yes.
Okay.
And they play so much nickel that I think that's essentially like, Elijah and Alohi are both starters, even if their base defense does not include that.
Right.
Because when they play nickel, Derwin's in the slot. So
yes,
I think both of them are technically starters.
Okay. I want Molden in the Pro Bowl conversation? I think in terms of voting and even nationwide voting, it's almost like the Oscars where they just votes cancel kind of each other out when there's two people that are the one's a great actor and there's another one who's kind of in the same movie and votes cancel. Anyway, I think Derwin, even if he plays a ton of slot snaps, people are like, oh, well, Derwin's the safety and that's who I'm voting for. And so I think for Molden, it's like, he might not get all the votes to actually be a Pro Bowl player.
Yeah.
But that's a voting thing. I think with this, I'm more discussing like play. I would have Molden as solid starter for now, and that to not be a knock on him.
Yeah.
I just don't know if he'll be like Pro Bowl conversation.
Yeah. I think he would have to do it like play his exact season again and improve a little bit to get real Pro Bowl recognition, because right now his PFF grades look good. People like Cody Alexander who study defenses like know he's good, but it's not like the general film watching community is not like, oh my gosh, Elijah Molden, let's talk about him more. He's still kind of very much under heralded in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think solid starter is fair, with the understanding that he could still jump up a tier after this. Yes.
And then for me, even though I think we like Alohi Gilman more than most, I have him more as average starter.
Yeah, there was another injury last year, which is unfortunate. I think like I've been kind of a guy to, pump Alohi's status up a little bit, just because like he's such a turnover machine. But watching the difference between how Alohi plays run defense versus Elijah Molden play run defense really stood out to me last year. And I think Alohi is a little bit more prone to misses and poor angles. Can he make up for that given his turnover tendency? Yes, but I think Elijah is a little bit more consistently solid than Alohi is. But when Alohi is on his game, like he definitely can jump up higher than this for sure.
Yeah, I agree there. So the Chargers are very lucky with their safety trio. And hey, Tony Jefferson in there as well. This is the fourth guy who we've not discussed.
Yeah.
Tony Jefferson, though, pure rotation player. We only have, actually, no, sorry, we have Mickens as well.
Yeah. And shout out Jefferson's younger brother committed to the University of Utah yesterday, which is always fun to see. The Chargers-Utah connection. So his younger brother is 6'5" and plays tight end. So I don't know what happened there with those genes. But that was a fun one for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Tony Jefferson, who's active? Jefferson or Mickens?
Oh man.
I think it's Jefferson personally.
You think Jefferson's going to play special teams?
Yeah, why not? Did he play special teams last year? Hold on. Let me put a pin in that comment. If he played one special team snap last year, I'm in. Did he not? He got to play special teams last year.
I know he did like field goal block and stuff like that, but
yeah, so more towards the, because he didn't like play a ton initially, but he played 45 special team snaps, 12 against the Raiders.
AJ Finley was still their safety who had the most special team snaps, and he only played like 4 games.
That's crazy. Oh, man.
Molden had 121. Jefferson 55.
Yeah, and he played
Gilman
10 against
30.
Houston. I think Mickens is more is safer to make the roster than Jefferson, but I think Jefferson is actually going to be the one that's active once they sort that initially.
Yeah. I think there's a good chance they keep 5 safeties on the active roster this year.
Yeah, I think
Given how much Derwin plays in the slot, I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a pretty good chance that both of them make the roster. Mm-hmm. And Mickens is your special teams safety player. Mm-hmm. And they figure out that other roster spot somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So I think Mickens we can put in the E category just because he's not going to get snaps over the other 4 on defense. Mm-hmm. But I do think because of his special teams ability in college, I think there's a very good chance that he's still on the active roster.
Okay.
And then we can leave Jefferson here in this category.
Yep, I'm right there with you.
Just because if he were to start, I would feel good about him starting, but I just think him and Perryman are definitely more of like rotational players versus guys they want to actively start, I think.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. So that's all for the safeties, right? Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Cornerback conversation next.
Do I have to?
We'll start with the easier ones. I think, unfortunately for him, Dean Leonard just has gotten like zero mention at all this offseason. Even Jasir Taylor has gotten a decent amount of buzz. So I think for Dean, I think he's very much on the bubble. Who's the one in between Kennard and Benjamin St. Just?
That is Jasir Taylor.
Oh, okay.
I agree with your silence.
I guess we can move to Triquez.
Okay. Okay, so let's just skip him. We'll save Taylor for the end. That's what everybody wants. Bridges.
Bridges is tough, man. Like there's the I guess we could say the four that I think we know are going to make the roster are Tarheeb, Cam, Dante Jackson, and Benjamin St. Just.
Yeah, I think so.
Like 100% know that they're on the roster.
Yes. I think Bridges would also be, but they literally did nothing with their 7th round picks last year.
Right.
So it's not like it's never happened with this team.
Right. So then again, like who's the 5th player in that regard? And that 5th player is going to have to play special teams. So Jasir Taylor, we know, can play special teams. Dean Leonard, we know, can play special teams. Will they trust a rookie cornerback who's kind of been like a safety corner hybrid to play special teams right away for them? Then Bridges can obviously show that, and he can earn that roster spot. Yeah. And then the other question is, do they even keep 6? Because Derwin is essentially, slot corner for them potentially. So I think there's a very real chance they only keep 5. And Derwin is essentially your 6th. And then that leaves somebody who is potentially deserving of a roster spot out in the cold.
Yeah. And this is a team we just did running backs and fullbacks and tight ends. Like, I don't know, like they're kind of obsessed with that whole group too. Right. So like, okay, Raheem Sanders makes it, and Steve Klotz makes it. Okay, which deep are you cutting? Dean Leonard? Are you cutting Bridges or I guess Mickens potentially? Which I don't think is going to happen, but okay, I need to move these. Who's St. Just is safe. We feel that way.
Yeah. So move Tarheeb, Cam, and Dante Jackson up for now.
Okay, I'll just move them up.
Just so like we have all of them.
Yeah.
They're safe. Because I think that's their most likely trio.
Yeah.
So then we're looking at Jasir Taylor, Benjamin St. Just, and Tri Bridges.
Things might change, and I do believe I disagree with this, but Jaw Taylor's been the one who's playing the most, and he's playing outside. They're playing him quite a bit. I think he's in the rotation player. If I had to put one of these 3, I think he's the rotation player.
Yeah, and they for all the gripe he gets, they handed him the slot receipt. They handed him the slot position right away out of training camp. Like they were unquestioned starter last year, and they didn't necessarily have to do that. They drafted Tarheeb Still, who they initially wanted to play slot. So I think there's a very good chance Jasir makes the roster. At worst, we know he can play special teams, which he didn't really get to do last year because of the injury and because he was starting and things like that. So I think Jasir and Benjamin St. Just are honestly pretty safe. And then it comes down to, can Bridges or Dean Leonard show enough to make the roster over somebody like Tony Jefferson or RJ Mickens or Delshon Phillips, maybe, which I would be kind of surprised at. But I think I feel good about those 5 being the main 5.
Yeah, which I would not have guessed 2 months ago, or even on draft night after day 3, that Jasir Taylor would be the person I would have here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is with Dean Leonard and why he can't play outside. I haven't seen a practice or heard of practices where he's been bad. Usually he's been good in training camp. Yeah. Preseason's not really an issue.
He was great in the preseason last year. He was great.
Better special teamer right now than Jasir Taylor. They used to be neck and neck. But like I don't think Dean Leonard's in danger of being cut, but then it's like, okay, who are you cutting? Man, our roster projection episode is going to be tough.
Yeah.
With all they drafted so many new people, and someone's got to go. I don't know who it's
when
going
they
to be.
drafted Bridges, I was like, okay, Jasir and Dean are probably gone. You know,
At least
Bridges,
one of them.
Bridges, at least one of them. Bridges is going to be on the roster, but you know, I just don't know if they keep 6 corners. Like and
if Derwin gets hurt, like they're gonna put. Well, I guess they put Tarheeb in the slot. I take that back. Or maybe they don't. Tarheeb still having a Pro Bowl outside corner season where you can stick him on the inside and play Bridges on the outside or St. Just. I don't know.
Yeah,
so I think they like his flexibility.
I think, to be clear for us, I think we agree with Dylan. I think I would rather have Dean over Benjamin St. Just.
Sure.
But Dean's not getting first team snaps with the defense, and Benjamin St. Just is. And they've talked about St. Just and his traits a lot. And I think Dean Leonard is taller and longer, but Benjamin St. Just is like 6'4" and like 205.
Yeah.
You know, he's built exactly like they want their corners to look like. You know, him and Cam Hart are basically like identical. I think Benjamin St. Just like an inch taller, but they like him and they see enough traits there to work with him. Mark Davis pointing out they've talked a lot about Jasir Taylor. You know, Jim Harbaugh says that he's one of their 8 most ascending players this year.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. Like year 4 corner, I don't know truly how much you can ascend, but I think he's comfortably making the roster. And then you figure out, do you keep 6 corners? Do you keep 5 safeties? You know, the tight ends, like you mentioned, the running backs, you know, etc. So I think, unfortunately, just given the nature of the roster, Dean and Bridges are definitely more on the bubble for me right now.
Yeah, between Bridges, him and Bridges, you have 2, you know, taller boundary corner types, and I think just they're 2 athletes, 2 7th round picks. Granted, one was drafted by the regime, and one plays special teams. But yeah, I think it's between them. Like whoever wins gets the roster spot.
Yeah. Okay, I think we can leave St. Just and Jasir where they're at. Just given
that's fine by me.
I think we're all on the same page. That Tarheeb, Cam, and Dante are probably going to end up being their main 3. The question then is, I think we're going to elevate Tarheeb, but
yes,
are you elevating Cam or Dante Jackson from that spot, or are you leaving them as an average starter?
If I were to elevate either, it would be Cam Hart. The thing is, again, like our feelings versus facts, they are starting Dante Jackson right now, and he does not have the thing to be recovering from. He does, as far as I'm aware, not have the at least recent injury and concussion history that Cam Hart had, and they've paid him. They've paid him a decent amount of money, and I don't think that's going to be for your 3rd corner. So I hope Jackson can be a solid starter. I have a hard time believing it. Like I think it'll be like Hand, just a solid, fine, not solid, like a solid starter, but an okay boundary corner for them. I'm dubious he's better than Christian Fulton was last year, especially at Fulton's best. I think Cam Hart's awesome. I just don't know how much he's going to see the field. So to me, I'm just keeping both of them here, even though only like 2 of them are starting. But I don't know. I think Cam Hart's play is going to indicate average. Like when Cam Hart played, was he not at least even a solid starter for them? I think he was awesome.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much he's going to play.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially given the injury concerns and things like that. The shoulder injuries, you know, the concussions. I think he definitely has a much higher ceiling this, and obviously you guys listening know how I have felt about Cam and evaluated him as a draft prospect. It's always just been the health aspect, which I think that's the main reason why they signed Benjamin St. Just, because they were like, if Cam is not going to play, we want somebody who looks like Cam and can play like Cam. And so, you know, they have a nice backup plan there, and maybe similar conversation for Triquez Bridges, I guess, as well there. So I'm fine leaving them both in an average starter category for now. Dante Jackson, I think, you know, they paid him like a veteran starting corner, like a low end CB2 kind of contract. And I think that's kind of the play that they'll give him. So can he play more effective than Christian Fulton? I don't know. I think he'll be around the football more. I think his instincts at catching, you know, the high point is a little bit better than Christian Fulton. But for all the flack that Fulton got, he was a great run defender for them.
He was.
I think that was the main reason why they were interested in signing him. I just don't see that kind of play from Dante Jackson. He makes a lot more like business decisions at corner. So I think average starter is probably his ceiling at this point in time. I mean, he's been in the NFL for quite a while. But I think they were a little reluctant to, because the issue with Fulton is that he got beat over the top a lot. Obviously, like the Xavier Worthy touchdown in week 4. There were a couple other ones, that happened. I think Marvin Mims beat him over the top. I think Dante Jackson will give them better play in that regard, and I think he can give them a few more interceptions, pass breakups, but they are definitely losing something when it comes to run defense without Fulton, and Jackson's it's not his strength at all.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm fine with him here.
Yeah.
Tarheeb still, okay, so the Chargers are very high on him.
Yeah.
I forget what the heck my bold prediction was, but it was something good, I think, with Tarheeb still, or whatever we did with Tarheeb still. Anyway, I think at minimum he is in solid starter. The question becomes Pro Bowl conversation. Is he one of those guys? And does it come down to just simply how many big plays do you have, and does that get you votes sometimes? Which with Tarheeb still, yeah, he actually could get some of those votes because of the nature of how he plays. We know he's a starter. He's going to start in some capacity. He'll play, arguably the second most snaps other than like Derwin James, I think. So my concern, and the chat's brought it up, is this year's a lot more difficult in terms of offenses they're facing. And I can't keep talking about that and saying that's a thing that they're going to face and then just not address it here in the rankings.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be some up and down this year because ultimately now they know they've had, opposing offenses have film on him and on Minter's defense. And sometimes you have bad games. I mean, you're facing, AJ Brown, and yet Tarheeb still has to cover AJ Brown or whatever they do this year. That's just going to be difficult. I'm fine with him in solid starter, and I feel that he will have great play, okay play, worrisome play throughout the year, which is, I think, a win, and anything more is a plus, but I think that's a win for him. I think solid starter feels fair for him.
What was that noise?
Oh, a truck outside hit their brakes. 18-wheeler hit their brakes pretty hard.
Nice.
Squeak. Yeah.
Yeah, do we think Tarheeb can be a Pro Bowl caliber corner? I think yes. His instincts and things like that are just so tremendous. But last year, they put Cam Hart and Christian Fulton more often on opposing number ones than they did Tarheeb. Tarheeb was their number 2, and the other guys got to rotate more against Jamar Chase and things like that than Tarheeb did. And so are there going to be games where Tarheeb is tasked with, matching up more with the number ones, and there are more better number ones this year? It's going to create a much more difficult season for him, more challenging at least. And so he's doing all the right things, right? We're hearing all the positive things. He's becoming a better leader. He's working out extra with Khalil Mack. He's doing all of the work to take that kind of leap. And I think we will feel better about his play, but I think given the opposing receivers that he's going to have to face, do we see him take that leap, or do we see him, give up 700 yards, but also have the 4 interceptions? And it's a bit more up and down, but we feel kind of better about where he's at individually. I think is potentially a more likely season than he's an awesome Pro Bowl caliber corner right now, 6 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, etc. So I think he will take a leap. I don't know if we see Pro Bowl this year. I think that's probably more of a 2026 conversation.
Yeah.
Is it possible? Yes, absolutely. But I think the combination of he's going to have more difficult assignments. He's going to be more targeted more frequently, I should say. And I think that could lead to some more up and down play versus consistently being a true CB1. So I think high end CB2 is this year, and then maybe next year he becomes a true CB1.
Yeah, I'm hoping we see the best of an Asante Samuel Jr., great in coverage, picks off passes, but also can tackle and play the run and such.
Yeah.
But with Asante Samuel Jr., everyone is so enamored with the interceptions and the passes broken up. that 2-year stretch of his, he gave up like 1,700 yards or something. You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of give and take with that as well. So I think we'll see some of that this year, but like a better version because he'll play the run better. I think solid start is just fine.
Yeah. The other thing that could help him take that Pro Bowl leap, which we didn't really see him do a lot, but in the preseason, he was blitzing very frequently. Like I think he got a sack and a half in the preseason. And then we just didn't really see him do that a whole lot. A lot of that is because he was playing on the outside. So if he gets more slot snaps and he can give you, 2 sacks, maybe 3 next year, then that would definitely help him become like a Pro Bowl level player as well. So a lot of this just kind of depends on his usage, how often is he playing the slot versus outside. So I think we'll feel better about him. I just question really this year is Pro Bowl in the cards, just because he's going to face a gauntlet of receivers that he didn't really get to see last year.
Yeah, it's tricky for me to say like, okay, now in the face of 3 of the 4 All Pros, he's going to become a Pro Bowler. If he does, he's going to be a special corner.
Yeah.
And I think he still can be. I just do not see that in the cards for him this year. These guys are very good.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get to Jesse Minter, we'll take some questions as well. Our audio audience is going to take one more quick break, and then our YouTube audience is going to continue right along after this. Okay, so defensive coordinator wise, I was looking at this list of coordinators earlier today, and I don't know, man. Like, I think Jesse Minter is at worst like one of the 5 best. Like, I know he just had the 1 season, but you look at some of these other guys who have, objectively much better rosters. Like, I don't think any defensive coordinator did more with less than Jesse Minter did last year. When we talked about some of the development of these players. So I think Jesse Minter, until we see otherwise, like, I think he's an S tier defensive coordinator.
I'm worried we're going to see not otherwise, but less than what it was last year. And that's why I'd have him more in the Pro Bowl tier because of what he's going to face this year. And it's not necessarily his fault. As you mentioned, he did more with less. And I'd argue the roster this year is worse than last year, or at least on defense. And at minimum, more question marks other than safety. Just not 100% sure about like interior defensive line. In theory, we were talking about Joey Bosa taking a step forward last year. Now we're hoping Thule does. And it just, I don't know. To me, I think, like you said, he might not be worse than like top 5, top 6. I just don't know if he's top 3 just yet. Now, can I name those 3 off the top of my head? Not necessarily. I just think it's very early. And he even admitted, I think it was him, or at least the team is admitting, maybe it was Bowman. I think it was Navarro Bowman. But the defense overall has been saying, we were great against bad offenses. Yeah. Can we be great against the good ones and the great ones? And I don't think, because they haven't shown that yet, like, let's say, Spags potentially has in moments for sure, been able to do that. And now that I think Minter can't do that, I just want to see them do it consistently before I put him in that S tier. I don't think he's officially there just yet. And perhaps, I don't know, the league swings in different directions. There is a possibility the league goes, okay, we've got it figured out. And now the new thing has to come in. I don't think that'll be the case this year, but at some point, like, they're going to figure out Minter and McDonald and these guys. So I don't think that's this year, but that is also possible as well. I personally would put him in the A tier and not feel bad about that at all. And if they do it again this year against those offenses with, I think, less talent, I'm not sure there's another coach in the league, a defensive coordinator, who's better than Jesse Minter.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think looking at the list, I think you could probably say, so Spags, definitely. He's just earned that.
Yep.
Vic Fangio, I think Brian Flores has enough of a track record. So there's 3. Dennis Allen, we've seen with the Saints, he's had a tremendously strong track record, but like the ending when he was a head coach wasn't great.
Yeah.
Robert Saleh previously with the 49ers had a good track record. If you're counting the head coaches, obviously you're talking about Todd Bowles and DeMeco Ryans, McDonald. So I think Pro Bowl is probably more fair, but I think he can definitely make that jump, like you mentioned.
Yeah, definitely. You do it again this year. one, probably goodbye. It was nice having you on as a coach, but yeah, he's awesome. I have no concerns or reservations about him. And if the defense, we'll talk about the Chargers defense next. If they drop off a little bit this year, I almost don't even put that on Minter. At some point, he just needs players.
Yeah, I understand why they put more of their resources towards the offense. Like that was ultimately the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely would have liked to see them be a little bit more proactive on defense, especially up front. But next year, hopefully we can get him some blue chip defensive line players, I think in particular.
Yeah.
Defense overall, I think solid defense, I think is probably where I would end up. I mean, if you look at the rankings, they were in the top 8 in most of them. Like I think they ended up in 3rd in DVOA. EPA per play, they were like 4th. Success rate was more like 7-8. Mm-hmm. But like you mentioned, and the Chargers are aware of, they did that a lot against bad offenses. So they're going to face better offenses this year. I think the defensive tackle room and the corner room still have some questions. So I think we see them regress a little bit, but I just think the floor is so high for them that I think like worst case scenario is they're like 15th, I think is probably where I would end up at, but very much like an average to above average defense. I think solid is probably more where I think they'll end up.
Yeah, I definitely think so too. More difficult opponents, more difficult division. The Broncos, in theory, should be better on offense. The Raiders basically can't be worse than they were on offense. So just in their own division, it's going to be more difficult. So yeah, I think a solid defense, top 15 is a win to me. If they go through that with this talent and they're still top 15, yeah, that's a huge win. I think where do we have the Chargers offense? Average,
yeah.
So that's so depressing, man. Which is funny because if I had Jesse Minter coaching the offense and that was a thing, I think we'd put the offense a lot higher.
Yes.
And Greg Roman, the defense, I think we put the defense a lot lower.
Yes.
Unfortunately, there's a ton of resources with the worst coordinator, fewer resources with the far superior coordinator.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, wait, here we go. Wait, solid. There we go. I had it right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they have enough pieces where the floor is very high, but I think doing this exercise has made it pretty clear that they're still a few blue chip pieces away from being like a true contender right now.
Yes, definitely. They almost basically took your offensive heavy approach. Granted, you went more into your offensive lineman, but they didn't do a lot for, so they went Caldwell in the 3rd round and Dante Jackson. Deshaun Hand. Like that is
most of the defense is coming back.
Yes. While losing Puna Ford, technically losing Joey Bosa. That's Christian Fulton. That's a lot of pressure on Jesse Minter this year.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he's earned a lot of trust in that regard, but I would definitely like to see them like if I know everybody's really hyper fixated on the interior offensive line, but if the Chargers could make any pre-training camp addition, it would be a defensive like difference maker.
Yep.
And usually you don't see trades at this time of year. Usually that's kind of more like an end of training camp thing. But I would like to see them be aggressive at some point during this season to add some kind of difference making defensive talent, ideally at defensive tackle or I guess outside corner is maybe a concern for me, but I wouldn't hate like another pass rushing defensive tackle would be fantastic. So yeah, man, people asking about Puna Ford. If we still had Puna Ford, I think we would put him in the Pro Bowl category. Again, the numbers next to them are tricky because a lot of the defense positions are like cut up, and like, is Puna Ford one of the 8 best defensive tackles in the league? Probably not. Is he one of the best 8 nose tackles in the league? Yes. I think that's more of that kind of conversation. So, but yeah, man, I think I would like to see them add along the defensive line, probably more than any other position, just to try and get, a tick better in the middle to help elevate this defense.
100% agree. That would be. I am resigned to the fact that they are set on the interior offensive line for better or worse.
Yeah,
you and I, Chargers fans, starting to catch up. It's one of the two in some order. D tackle, I do feel like they are fine adding. I don't know. Obviously, earlier they said, well, we didn't keep Ford, but we got 2 to 3 other guys. But at some point, I think that talent has to matter. I think the talent at that spot has to matter more.
Yeah, I agree. All right, for our audio audience, just a quick recap. We have Derwin James in the All-Pro category. We have Khalil Mack, Deion Henley, and Jesse Minter in the Pro Bowl category. We have Tier Tart, Tuli Tuipulotu, Elijah Molden, Tareeb Still in the defense overall in the solid category. We have Deshaun Hand, Troy Dye, Junior Colson, Aloja. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna keep doing that. Alohi Gilman, Cam Hart, and Dante Jackson in the average starter category. And then we have Justin Eboigbe, Otito Ogbonia, Jamari Caldwell, Bud Dupree, Denzel Perryman, Tony Jefferson, Benjamin St. Juste, and Jasir Taylor, Kyle Kennard in the below average starter or rotation player category. And then we have Scott Matlock, Naquan Jones, Delshon Phillips. There we go. RJ Mickens, Dean Leonard, Triquez Bridges in the roster bubble or pure backup category. And then Tremont Morris Brash is our practice squad player. There are others, obviously, but
Sure.
he's the one that we focused on today.
Yep. I feel I'm hoping this group is elevated again. Honestly, I almost feel that other than Derwin and Khalil and maybe Henley, most of the players on this list, frankly, are probably a tier lower in most teams. But with Jesse Minter, I think we have that. We're feeling optimistic, which is a little sad. Like, this is our optimistic ranking, I think.
Sure.
So hopefully it looks more like this, if not better.
I mean, heck, we experienced a lot of these players with a different coaching regime, and it was not as nice. So,
yeah, no kidding.
Okay, we have a couple super chats. One from Miss Andrea Schoon. Always appreciate her jumping here. She says, "So ready for some football."
Yes,
the Hall of Fame game is a month and 3 days away, which is kind of crazy, right? It's July 31st.
July 31st. I will be back just in time for that.
Yeah, that'll be fun. That's right around the corner, which is kind of crazy. Very ready for some football. I think the month of July, I guess like the end of June, early July is like the worst time for sports because like the NBA is over, you know, football is in the dead zone, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not a big baseball guy, but this is about it. So yeah, very much ready for some football.
Yeah, definitely. Excited for my mom's prize picks and all that. Mom's probably not still watching, but happy anniversary to you guys tomorrow. They celebrated yesterday. They're on year 30 something. I lose track at this point. So congrats to them.
Yeah, congrats to the Schoon family. Crescendo 2321. Yeah, 2321. Morning stream caught me off guard. Thanks, guys. Appreciate all of you guys for tuning in today. We haven't done a Saturday stream in a while, just because it's that kind of off season right now. But yeah, I was sick earlier, so I'm starting to feel like I'm running out of gas a little bit. You know, after podcasting for an hour and 13 minutes, but happy to be here on a Saturday with you guys. Okay. Was there any comment or anything that you wanted to jump into, or is that it?
Nope. I am happy to let you go.
Okay. All right, guys, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be back next week on the usual schedule. We'll probably do a roster prediction at some point in the next couple of weeks before training camp actually kicks off. Like Tyler mentioned, there's a lot of spots up for grabs this year, so very interesting to see how that turns out. All right, make sure like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff always helps continue to grow the show. That's going to do it for us today. As always, Bolt up.